Well, welcome back. Welcome back. We've had two questions during our breaks, and I just want to give you guys some updates on where we are with the polls. So, the first poll we did was the years of those who are on have been triathletes, and it was an overwhelming 65% of you who are on this call today have been doing triathlons for 8 years plus. So, give yourselves a round of applause. The next group was 6 to 8 years, 23%. Shout out to my group. Now, 3 to 5 years, zero. So we have nobody like in that middle group. But our newbies, a resounding 13% from 0 to 2 years. Congratulations to all of you. We are in this together. Yes. So the next one was what's your favorite sport? Or which is your favorite? And do I have to say anything beyond it was triathlon? That's what we're here for. All right. Well, thank you guys for staying with us during that break. I am Mashonda, your host for today. And up next, we have the NCAA Pathways portion, where we have our speaker, Dr. Takima Dorsey, who is a pioneer, trailblazer, a glass shatterer, and transformational leader. Dr. Dorsey is the recipient of the USA Olympic and Paralympic Committee's 2020 Rings of Gold Individual Award. The first Marylander to receive this honor. She is the recipient of the USA Triathlon Women's Committee 2020 Diversity and Inclusion Award. In just 4 short years, Dr. Dorsey has rose to the top of the multi-sport industry, not widely represented by minorities. She has earned her seat at the table as the first African American to serve on the USA Triathlon Board of Directors in the board's 45-year history, defying the odds, creating opportunities for others while being an inspiration and hope to many. Dr. Dorsey continues to be a role model for the urban girls and boys worldwide while continuing to break through the glass ceiling of life. Dr. Takima serves as CEO of the International Association of Black Triathletes, senior consultant at DTD's Urban Multisport Consulting Firm, and general director for the Mid-Eastern region, overseeing Maryland, Washington, D.C., Virginia, West Virginia, Delaware, Ohio, North Carolina, Tennessee, and Kentucky. This year, she has authored two books related to her work with IABT. A Deep Dive, an urban multi-sport impact, outlines her process of connecting and growing triathlon for urban youth in the Baltimore area in an effort to provide a blueprint for similar programs across the nation. Empowering triathletes to lead explores ways in which multi-sport can break the cycle of poverty in urban communities. Both books are available on Amazon bestsellers and have workouts that accompany them. Let's give it up for Dr. Takima Dorsey.
Thank you, Mashonda, and welcome everyone for today. Well, I was like, man, that's a long bio. Like, I need to learn how to cut that shorter. So thank you so very much. What a pleasure. And thank you for USAT for allowing me to share some knowledge with the audience today. And so to get started, I want to be able to share what our objectives, what I'm hoping that we can accomplish by the end of today's session. I'm hoping that you'll be able to understand the NCAA triathlon pathways. It's with great hope that you'll understand variables faced by diverse populations, and that you will be able to not just understand the variables that's faced by diverse populations and the NCAA triathlon pathways, but that you can walk away with creating a mini blueprint ready for action to make a difference. But before we get started, I want to be able to test your knowledge. So I want you to go over to www.kahoot.com. You can bring it up on your phone, or you can go to the actual website, kahoot.com, and enter the PIN 733-7168. I'm going to stop sharing this screen and actually bring up the Kahoot game so that we can get started. Sometime today. Kahoot, where we go? There we go. Oh, unmute. And so as you are putting in your name, you can actually see everyone's name popping up on the screen. Hello, Casey and Kelly. We are excited to have you guys here with us. And then we have Denise and Brett, welcome. All right, Jason and Doc. Hopefully you guys can also be able to hear the sound. I think we can't. Let's see if we can hear the music. Nope, doesn't look like, but that's okay. We'll give everyone maybe 30 more seconds as we get everyone. As you can see, if you go to kahoot.it or the Kahoot app or your website, you'll be able to enter the PIN. And then once you enter your name, you'll be able to see you here on a screen. And so this is a great way for us to kind of see how far, how much we know about the NCAA Women's Pathway movement or just the collegiate opportunities in our wonderful sport. Excellent. You guys are on a roll. All right, let's give each other like 20 more seconds. And so as we're also going through this, there is no right or wrong answer. We just want to gauge your level of comfort and your level of understanding of what's out there in the NCAA pathway movement, because there are a lot of untapped potential that we want to make sure that you are fully engaged and fully aware of. All right, so I'm going to do a 10-second countdown. 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, so let's get started. All right, let's test your triathlon knowledge in 3, 2, 1. All right. How many NCAA women's varsity triathlon programs are there? Is it red 25, blue 39, gold 33, or green 37? Click your answer and then hit submit. You have in this corner 10 seconds left. All right, the answer is currently there are 33 programs, 33 colleges and universities that offer the NCAA Women's Varsity Triathlon Program. Great job. All right, Bert is leading that scoreboard. Okay, question number 2. What is the name of the first HBCU that offered the NCAA Women's Varsity Triathlon Program? Is it red, University of Maryland Eastern Shore, blue, Morgan State University, gold, Howard University, or green, Hampton University? Got 17 seconds left. Outstanding. Yes, in 2018, Hampton University was the first HBCU to offer the program. All right, we're having some shift in leadership there. Third question, what year did the second HBCU join the NCAA Women's Varsity Triathlon Program? Was it red 2017, blue 2020, gold 2019, or green 1958? That would make that program really old. We have 10 seconds. Correct. No. Oh, sorry. Yes. In 2020, Del State University came on in March of 2020 as the second HBCU. Okay, number 4. Which injury does not commonly occur during triathlons? Is it A, concussion, which is red, B, Achilles tendonitis, which is blue, yellow, calf muscle tear, or green, bursting disc? Haha, you thought it was going to be an NCAA Women's Varsity Triathlon Program question, didn't you? Be ready for the switch up. All right, you have 7 seconds. Yes, the answer is concussion. Great job. Moving on, number 5, true or false? True or false? HBCU stands for Historically Black College and Unions. Absolutely. The answer is Historically Black College and Universities. Great job. Casey is wearing us out today. Someone knows their answer. So, who is responsible for assisting young girls in reaching their full NCAA women's varsity triathlon program potential? You, in this question, you can select more than one answer. Is it red, parents and athletes, blue, community partners, yellow, coaches and race directors, green, USA Triathlon? You have 8 seconds. Absolutely. All 4 are responsible for assisting young girls in reaching their NCAA varsity program potential. Great job, everyone. All right, Christy, she's moving up the rank. You get twice the points. What year and location was the first NCAA Women's Varsity Triathlon Combine? Was it the year 1999 with the West Coast Combine in New York, New York? Was it 2019 in New England Combine in Connecticut? Was it 2016 a Southwest Combine in Hampton University? Or was it the 2018 Youth and Junior Combine, Westchester, Ohio? Correct. The answer is 2019 New England Combine up in Connecticut that was held. It was the first one in USAT history and a wonderful filter into the NCAA pathway. Great job. All right, Brian, we see you. All right, question number 8. How many females from minority backgrounds are currently competing in the NCAA Women's Varsity Triathlon program? Is it red, less than 5, blue, less than 10, yellow, greater than 7, green, greater than 15? The answer is yes, red, less than 5. Great job. But that doesn't mean it is a bad thing. This is why we're here today, so we can change those numbers. Great job, Brian, Rocky, and Christy. You guys are on a roll. All right, multi-select. What factors would assist in increasing the NCAA Women's Triathlon Pathways in communities of diverse populations? Is it red, advocacy, leadership, vision, and innovation? B, which is blue, coaches and race directors. Yellow, education, awareness, and exposure. Green, parents and athletes. You can choose more than one answer for this question. Yes, absolutely. All 4 areas would assist in increasing the pathways in diverse communities. Great job, everyone. And last but not least, and this is a multi-select one as well, double the points. At what age should the young ladies from diverse populations be introduced to the NCAA Pathways opportunity? Is it red, 15 to 18, blue, 11 to 14, yellow, 8 to 10, or green, less than 7? And these are ages, by the way. All right, so my answer was 8 to 10 and 11 and 14. And by the end of the presentation, you'll understand why. But yours may have been a little different depending on where you are in programming. So let's see how you guys stacked up against the competition. Who is number 3 on the podium? Good job, Rocky. What? That must be wrong. Okay, Brett takes number 2, and number 1 is Brian. Great job, everyone. And okay, and Chrissy and Shock were runners up, number 4 and 5. Again, this was no right or wrong. We wanted to see where you guys were in terms of your knowledge dealing with this population of individuals. Now, as we go along here today, oh man, I gotta stop sharing. Gotta bring up my other screen. Okay. Come on. Back in 2014, I completed my first Ironman. And when I crossed that line, this was the greatest accomplishment I felt in my life. But let me go back a few months. I first completed my first endurance multi-sport event in August of 2013. It was a duathlon. I had already had 20 something years in endurance running. Cycling was a new hobby of mine, but my only concern was how would I piece this together? Lo and behold, I did the duathlon 70.3 and came in first place in my age group. Can you imagine how much on a high I was? I was off the chart. So I figured, let me give this try thing a roll. All I had to do was replace that 5K in the beginning to a swim, continue that 56-point-mile bike, and then run 13 miles for the half Ironman. However, I didn't know how to swim. Like most kids in urban communities, I grew up in and around pools. However, my problem was, just like we typically see in urban communities, I happened to be around a pool when I was young. Some kids threw me in the water, pulled my head down underneath, wouldn't let me up. I couldn't breathe. We were in a deep end. I'm anxious. I'm fearful. And when I got out the water, I vowed never to return. Now, fast forward to age 43, December of 2013, I had a new goal in sight. I decided that I wanted to do a triathlon because I had done so well in my endurance duathlon. You couldn't tell me that I couldn't get this done. It was one of my bucket list items. I signed up for a teen and training because I wanted to be able to raise money to give back to charity and also be around other like-minded individuals. Hired a coach off of Coach Up, and then the rest is history. 9 months and 15 days later, I became an Ironman. Man, was that an exciting time in my life. Lo and behold, as a mom, I had an audience. Sometimes we don't know who's looking and how we're inspiring them. Inside my own home, I had my children, I have 4, but 3 that happened to be in elementary that were becoming inspired by what they saw me doing. So right after Ironman Maryland in September of 2014, about a few weeks later, they said, we want to be just like you. So I'm looking like, what do you mean? We want to be a triathlete. Okay. Now, as a parent, I'm not going to tell them no, but in my mind, I'm thinking like, how am I going to get this done? So I had to put my big girl pants on, understand what I had introduced to them and I had accomplished, and I had to figure out how I was going to make this work. I had internal hurdles to jump over as an individual. I was already a leader, already a community advocate, already knew my strength, already was in leadership in school systems. But here comes my external challenges, the sport of triathlon. Now, mind you, I played professional women's football for 6 years. Yes, not flag football or panty line footballs, but helmet, pads, the whole nine. I was a running back and wide receiver. I was with 20 years endurance running. I had coached on many levels. But here comes this internal challenge by this external motivation, which was the sport of triathlon. So I figured because of my youth, I had to work this out. So I looked around the industry after I completed Ironman Maryland, and I had to understand and was trying to understand, figure out where do I find this blueprint? The blueprint that not just focused on youth, but focused on a divisive plan that was going to help me bring my kids' internal goal to life. Well, you're looking at it. There was not a blueprint that really focused on urban communities, focused on youth that I could glean from. No problem. I had to dig deep because like Martin Luther King, I had a dream. I had a dream to ensure that what my kids were asking, as well as other urban kids, that this was going to be something that they will one day be able to do as well. And what I understood is that before me, I had a glorious opportunity to inject a new dimension of love into the veins of our civilization. And for me at that point, that dimension of love was the sport of triathlon. So I laced up, got my internal team together, which were my youth as my motivators, those that encouraged me and helped me be accountable, and my external motivation of trying to understand how to connect the dots with the sport, because I didn't understand the sport of triathlon outside of just being an athlete. So part of that understanding and learning the external motivation was to understand the NCAA pathway progression. There's a youth part for youth younger than 11. There's a junior part for youth as they progress ages 12 to 14. Those youth that they can continue on through high school, or they can go to youth and junior elite pathway, which is right around the ages of 12 to 17, or they can continue on the youth and junior elite pathway or join a high school club, and bam, there's the NCAA collegiate pathway. Sounds good, right? It does, but not for urban youth. Here's the thing that we had to understand, and hopefully you can hear this, but if not, look at the captions on the screen. Should be 33. Okay, so what this was teaching me is that I understood the pathway for the NCAA progression. As a person from an urban community, I knew most of the aspects, but I had to do a little more deep dive for me to have a better understanding. And now I was ready to create the blueprint. The first part of the blueprint, my blueprint consisted of advocacy. And what do I mean by the advocacy? I'm meaning inward advocacy, self-advocacy. I had to change that I can't to I can, that I want to I will, my desire to I did, and that I'm not done. The work continues and that I'm just getting started. So along the way, as I was looking at my youth and help them pushing me and trying to connect the dots, I had to ensure that I was advocating, but internally first. So that self-advocacy helped me to put together the first part of my blueprint. Now, along the way, as you can imagine, because there's a lack of representation and education in diverse communities, I had a whole lot of no's before a whole lot of yeses. But with every 100 no's, that one yes kept the spark going. It kept the inspiration going, and it helped me to be motivated to continue to connect the dots for not just my youth, but other youth that we were coming into contact with. What I was able to do with helping to bring that dream alive was creating or connecting a sport of triathlon with causes. One of those causes that's near and dear to the sport, to urban communities or diverse populations, is that of childhood obesity. So one of the things that we did was to create an Overcoming Childhood Obesity campaign through Swim, Cycle, and Run. This was a 3-year campaign, but what you're seeing was the kickoff. It was a huge success in connecting the dots. Okay, now that I'm through the self-advocacy, what was the second part of my puzzle? That second part of the puzzle had to be leadership. And why was leadership so important? Because if we don't know what we're working with, we don't know how to proceed. So I had 3 core questions that I asked myself daily. Who do I know? I know myself. I knew diverse triathlon. I knew the diverse population. But I was still trying to connect the dots with the sport of triathlon and all that it had to encompass. Number 2, what can I do, me as an individual, trying to connect these dots? I could advocate. I could set SMART goals, short and long term. I knew that I had innovation. I knew that I had to keep pushing. And what does the acronym PUSH means? Pray until something happens. Because I was getting a whole lot of no's before I was getting yeses. And then I had to remain authentic. I couldn't sway based on which side the weather was going. I had to stay true to my mission. And number 3, who am I? Who is Takima Dorsey? I'm determined, I'm dedicated, I'm disciplined, I'm resourceful, I'm humble, I'm transformational, I'm innovative, I am a visionary, I'm a mover and a shaker, and I'm always trying to think outside the box. So here was my second piece of my mini blueprint, leadership. That leadership allowed me to create a team, not just within these individuals in the picture, but by 2018, we were in 6 schools, 5 in Baltimore County, 1 in Baltimore City. I had created the Youth and Junior Tri-Conference Expo event. We infiltrated the HBCU campus. We were getting, awards from and acknowledgement from governors, mayors, and county executives. So we were on our way, right? Maybe not, because the blueprint was not complete. Here comes the vision. So I had the self-advocacy, where I had to ask myself those questions. I had the leadership components, the who do I know, what do I want, and who am I? So now the vision could not be stalemate. I couldn't keep using the same programs over and over and over again, because issues in communities are diverse depending on where we are. And by 2019, we were in 4 places in the state of Maryland: Baltimore County, Baltimore City, PG County, and Montgomery County. So now I had to really continue to dig deep. What is my passion? 4 things: passion, purpose, blueprint, and impact. Passion. Why am I doing this? There was a daily reminder, because I'll be honest with you, there was some times that I wanted to give up. I was tired. As an African-American female, I was being talked over and talked under and talked through, even though I have 2 doctorates. I had much acclaim and fame and accolades before I entered this sport. But for some reason, it didn't matter. I had already broken glass ceilings and shattering glass, X, Y, and Z before, but it was like I was starting all over. So why am I doing this? When I looked into the eyes of my kids and looked into the issues in diverse populations, that was the answer. Number 2, what was my purpose? What was I trying to accomplish? What I was trying to accomplish was that pathway from inception to the collegiate on to workforce development, all of that, because these are all key aspects that youth need in urban communities or diverse populations. Blueprint. What was working? It was a lot of self-assessment and organizational assessment along the way. What was working? What was not working? who was involved and who did I need to get involved. You know, people think that there's always a one best approach to getting something accomplished. And I'm going to tell you that's not it. From the grassroots and frontline, all the way up to county executives, to superintendents, to the governor, and everybody in between, school systems. So every aspect of the chain, I was knocking on doors and hosting meetings, and doors were closed. And then I learned how to navigate, even within multiple diverse populations in the same state, there was still diversity that I had to navigate. And then last but not least, what was my current impact? What did I wanted to do, which was expand? And then what was our growth determinator factor? Number 3 was vision. My blueprint is coming together. In 2018, just like in 2017 and 2016, we continued to make history. So now, after 3 to 4 years, I'm starting to see the fruit of the labor, right? So am I done? Absolutely not. This was just a testimony that the more that you keep pushing past the nose, and the more that you keep putting one foot in front of the other, that you will see success at the end. Anything worth going for is worth, anything worth fighting for is worth continuing to push for. Then I had to come back and connect the dots again. So here we go, to a whole new level. Okay, now it leads to the 4th piece of my blueprint, which was innovation. What I continued to learn, and I always had this vision, but I didn't understand until some pieces on my end was going to be connected. USA Triathlon was creating programs, connecting their dots, and then it was all starting to come together, at least in theory. But the connection for diverse communities is not the sport. It's not the medal. It's how you connect the dot that's going to give them an outward pathway to something other than what they see daily. And for me, the sport of triathlon embodied that. So how was I going to be able to connect the dot? In this last video, you saw the college component, right? But so I had to continue. The 4th piece of my puzzle was innovation. 4 areas: education, awareness, exposure, and participation. Education, I always had to keep in mind that I had to understand diverse populations, and education was the number 1 arsenal in my toolbox. No matter who I spoke to, no matter Maryland, Delaware, Connecticut, it didn't matter. I had to assume they didn't know, because 9.999% of the time they didn't. Number 2, awareness wasn't just about education, but always keeping in mind how to convey the benefits of the sport to this population. So always keeping in mind the opportunities the sport offer, the pathways that existed in a sport, and that the opportunities that I was able to create under our organizational umbrella for this diversity pipeline, including the NCAA Triathlon Pathway. Exposure, creating opportunities through clubs, events, programs, services daily to unite diverse communities for youth and juniors, because here's the thing again, there is no one way to skin a cat, right? There are a multitude of ways that you have to keep thinking outside the box to connect the dots. Number 4, participation, introduction, consistency, and continuation of diverse populations in a sport, which means that if we had a group great one year, that wasn't enough. So how do we keep engaging them? So now we have the puzzle: advocacy, leadership, vision, and innovation. That should be it, right? We had to continue to include people that was gonna not only that we could teach, but then our community could learn from. This is a picture from our 2019 Youth and Junior Tri-Conference Expo and event. Rocky Harris, who is the CEO of USA Triathlon, was able to fly in. It was a really big deal. These youth were engaged, they was ready, but here was the key: they ran a conference. We had a last minute change, but it didn't matter because all we knew is that we was providing an outlet, an opportunity that they were able to step into a leadership position. Why? Because of the triathlon sport. And because of us being a 2020 grant recipient for the USAT Foundation, we were able to not only host a 6-month program for our leadership training and development, workforce training and development, college and career readiness, and health and wellness. Our student athlete leadership, this is our class of 2020, and not only did they receive recognition from the local mayor, but they received county executive recognition and governor's citation from the state of Maryland because of our external programs. So the sport opened up pathways for youth that goes far beyond. But let's now bring it back to the NCAA pathway. What you have to learn, or at least come to understand, is that in diverse populations, the sport of triathlon is not a privilege. It's an opportunity. So remember this chart from before when I talked about the NCAA pathway progressions: youth, junior, youth and junior elite, high school club at NCAA. That sounds great, but for diverse communities, it's not that simple. We have to ensure that we look at this as an opportunity. And because it's an opportunity, they are hungrier in order to make it work once the dots are connected for them. Here's a real testimony for you, because it's one thing to talk it, but it's another thing to have real life testimony and understanding. Remember the young lady from the picture before? Happens to be my youngest daughter, Haley. In this picture, I think she's like 7. So this is about six years ago. She was one of the ones that encouraged me to get off my high horse after crossing that finish line, and so that she could one day get into the sport. Well, 6 years later, Haley competed in August of 2019 in her first NCAA women's varsity triathlon combine. She has been to youth and junior nationals for the last 4 years, and she remains an NCAA women's triathlon varsity hopeful. So when we're talking about the advocacy, which was in the beginning, not only that, she's also been able to launch her business, Hales S Enterprises, through the sport of triathlon, helping other girls and boys through the sport as she was helped. In the beginning, my blueprint included advocacy, leadership, vision, and innovation. But now that we have 5 to 6 years underneath the belt, helping and creating a pathway for this, now I had to go back and narrow down what my blueprint looks like. Right now, it's always evaluating leadership for me, with a true vision at the end, with advocacy and innovation helping to tie the knot. Here was the goals for me today, was to help you understand the triathlon pathways, help you understand variables faced by diverse populations, because there is no number one factor. There is a variety of factors. And for you to create a mini blueprint on closing the desired gap for you to make a difference. My story started with me getting into the sport, but it evolved into something much greater. So my question to you, as you evaluate your blueprint, what's working, what's not working, and what is your pain point for success or help, so that not only can myself and other speakers in this conference and USA Triathlon and USA Triathlon Foundation and all of the ambassadors, how can we help you help yourself, help the community to create that pathway of opportunity for other females in diverse communities? And I'm open up for questions. And thank you so very much.
Thank you, Dr. Tima. That was amazing. You're right. Without vision, we definitely perish. And so we thank you for being, a forefront thinker and just having the wherewithal and the impact to start this organization, IABT. So thank you. However, I have a little bone to pick with you.
Wasn't my fault.
It was, honey, it was. Let me tell you. You mentioned which HBCUs, and there was one HBCU that you left off of the list.
What HBCU would that be?
The Florida Agricultural and Mechanical University, FAMU.
Okay, I was. Yes, I didn't. So I apologize for that. I only needed 1 and 2. I think I didn't focus in on the FAMU that started. So that's 3. So that makes it even better.
No, FAMU hasn't started. I'm just saying you didn't even include us in the list to select from. I was just hurt by that.
My bad.
I was hurt by
Sorry.
that. It's okay. It's okay. HBCU love all the way. I just had to give a shout out to my school. So that was a little plug. We do have a question for you. Miss Andrea says that she loves the realness about what you have to create to create your impact. She would want to know how, as a motivated woman, are you able to deal with the responsibilities as a mother? How do you get support from your partner and bringing in income to support your family while pursuing your vision?
That's a great question. So it is all about work-life balance. And because my kids they not only were they introduced, but they grew up through the sport. So the advocacy that I talk about, the leadership that I talk about, the vision and the innovation is not just me, because my kids, IBT is their organization. So as I'm growing, I'm learning from them. And so that's where that connection comes in. So as a family, IBT is a family organization, which is why we hone in on youth, but it's really a family concept because there is no division. So like my youth, they understand when I need a break, and I had to learn to take a break. I understand. I talked about SMART goals because I have to be smart about any and everything I do, because even trying to keep pushing through aspirations for success, I need to know when to step back. And in the beginning, that was hard because I just wanted to keep pushing and pushing and pushing and pushing and pushing. And the fruit of my labor is why I'm standing here today. And so now I can withdraw a little and allow others to come in, because we have proven that we are an organization is not just talking it, but continue to do it. So that's where that balance come in.
Wow. Thank you so much for answering that question. And thank you to Andrea for asking the question. We have another question that's really cool. And that's about what strategies would you consider for letting the collegiate NCAA bridge that to the youth? So how will the youth find out about collegiate NCAA opportunities?
Yeah, and so that goes back into part of the blueprint, as I talked about the advocacy, that leadership, that if I can go back, well, I don't want to go back, but when they go back and take a look at this, it's who's involved, who do I know, and who am I? So when I'm looking at those questions under the leadership, I know that I'm resourceful. I know that I'm determined. I know that I'm dedicated, but it doesn't always really know about who I am, but it starts with me. So I knew that if I didn't have the wherewithal or the confidence to reach out to a Rocky or an athletic director or superintendent, if I didn't advocate, then they wouldn't know about the sport. So if I don't advocate, then people don't understand. But the advocacy is internal first, and external second. That leadership allows me to push past people pushing me down, trying to suppress my voice so I can break through to connect the dots. The vision and programming and clubs and hosting events, most may not understand, but I hold certification as a youth and junior coach, youth and junior elite, level 1, and race director. And I chose that pathway of education so that I can become well invested. So in order for me to understand, I had to become certified. Once I understood the certification and continuing to be a student of the sport, then I can go out and advocate. So that's why I talked about the split. So in order for people to connect the dot with the NCAA pathways, you first have to understand what that pathway looked like. And that's USAT coaching certification and investment. Once you do that, you have to understand a population from which you're trying to break into. And when you're talking about diverse populations, there's no one angle. There are a multitude of angles, and even districts when inside of diverse populations have a subpopulation. So becoming a student of that population and having that knowledge and confidence and vision and being innovative, that's how you're going to close the dot. But it starts and ends with self.
That's so good. And I'm so grateful that we will be able to explore more about those pathways to leadership, because again, knowledge is power. And if we have the power, then we can change and affect change. Another question for you, and we'll wrap up in just a moment. Doc Golden says, thank you so much for sharing and doing all of this. I am a biracial woman coach. I am also an Ironman Maryland finisher. And she wants to bring triathlons to young, diverse communities. She has several questions, so buckle up. How are you getting the programs into the schools? And are these programs after school programs, weekend programs, and are they free to the kids? Do you pay your coaches and or volunteers only?
Yes, great question. So first and foremost, we had to, if you're going to do something, what I had come to find out, even doing a lot of work on the ground, before I could get into a school, I had to go big. So what did I mean? After 3 years, I went to an HBCU. I partnered with Morgan State University Community, their community mile, which is their board of directors. And we held our first youth and junior trial conference. At that point, I had done enough work grassroots that this was now getting the attention of the bigwigs, because what I needed so that I didn't have to keep doing individual work is that I needed to create a hub to bring everyone together. So once I created that hub, and we had the Secretary of State on stage, we had, our first youth and junior tri panel ever in the world. So in other words, I had to be innovative. I had to create that vision. I had to be transformational, because it's exhausting doing individual meetings. So for a person and then once I created the big conference, they started coming to me. It's funny because everyone that I had gone to, they were like closing the door, didn't want to hear it. They wanted to be an expert. I'm an African-American woman. Here I am, the expert, talking to these people who are experts, them feeling some kind of way, but I didn't give up. So you have to keep pushing. You have to keep knowing passion, purpose, having a blueprint, understanding what you're working with, all of the things that I talked about. So I'm hoping that she go back and take a look at this and really create her mini blueprint on who is she now, where does she want to go, who are her resources, and then how do you go from there. That's how we got into the school systems. And we were in 6 schools at one time in 2 different districts. So that was huge. To answer your question, how are we funded? We do have a multitude of funding streams, as Charlotina talked about before. We do go after grants. We do have volunteers. I'm a grant writer, so I'm writing grants as well. There is a small nominal fee because in diverse populations, there has to be a buy-in. You can't just give them something. And what we wanted people to understand is that this was just not a one and done. That if you come in through the sport and you increase self-esteem and all of that, now we want to open the door for you as to what the NCAA triathlon programs could offer your kids. In diverse populations, Ms. Shonda and crew, it's not just about the sport. Most kids can't afford college. most kids don't have the academic aspirations to get there. They may not have the financial wherewithal. So if we can just help keep planting the seed, and I created a sports academy for urban youth, which was my class of 2020, creating programs that's going to connect the dots will be able to not only get them and keep them, but be able to introduce them to the NCAA pathway. And I do want to add one question from the person before. I know I've reached out to coaches of the NCAA programs to introduce myself and see how I can get involved with them. And even with them at first, I didn't get a huge open return, but now they are reaching out. So as I mentioned before, there's no one best way of doing it, but I'll go back to the vision, passion, purpose, implementation. What's your impact? What's your blueprint? Because it really only starts with what we do. And I do like to, USAT does a great job with their programming and what they continue to try to at least do from the NGB level, but they can only do so much. So what we do know is that there is not a high level of minority females right now, but I could be one to encourage others. If you are not a certified coach yet, invest in yourself, go get certified. If you are unsure how to break through with clubs, know who you are and start from there. Have a conversations, expect more no's than yeses, reach out to people. I am available. There are other people that are doing phenomenal things, but it starts and ends with self, and the sky's the limit.
Absolutely.
You're welcome.
Thank you. We got to wrap this up, but I need you to hit two questions for me in one. So I'm gonna ask two questions, and if you can wrap them up in one, that would be fantastic. Perfect Timing Multisport had an amazing question. They loved your presentation. You're getting rave reviews on the presentation, which was fantastic, by the way. But he wants to know, what national programs are there for youth that can't afford
Wait, what did she
the
say?
things? Oh, can you still hear me?
Let me hold it.
Oh. What national programs are there for youth that can't afford the things needed to get into the sport?
Can't hear.
And the last thing is, are you mentoring others who want to do what you do?
Yes, the answer is yes. And I reached out to Megan and Rocky and said, hey, I want to be able to offer insight or mentoring if it becomes available. But then that's why I created the two books and workbooks that are coming up to be released on November 15th, a deep dive, and then empowering athletes to lead. Because what we find is that there's a lot of knowledge, right? But people want to know, they want to have those tangible steps, which is why I wanted people to create their blueprint, because my blueprint is mine. But can you see yourself in some of the things I talked about? Or what is your blueprint? And then how do you start from there? So anything that we do in life, as we know, Mashonda, is that we got to brainstorm, but we got to know why we're doing it. Not just why we're doing it, but how we're going to execute it. Not just executing, but who's around us that's willing to help. And I'll end on this, just understand that this thing called diverse populations, with this thing that's called the NCAA pathway, they're very unique, they're powerful, they're magical, they'll do a monumental amount of things to do, but it's a lonely path. It's a lonely walk. And it's so reminds you to be authentic. And when you are authentic, when you push away all of the negative, positive will come. So be authentic, stay true, do the research, because it's there.
And what about the national programs for youth who can't afford it? So is there a national program for youth that you're working with or that your organization has?
Yes, absolutely. We do. Like, even for example, this summer when we originally did our hybrid program, due to from the funding from the USAT Foundation, we did do scholarships for youth, for parents that were not able to afford our programming. And then for those that were in a program that didn't get a scholarship, we just offered it from a minimum financial standpoint. But one of the things that I talked about, Mashonda, earlier, that I definitely want to lean over to those, is that you have to be resourceful and get the community involved. You have to write those letters, you have to write those scripts, you have to reach out, you know, get someone to help. And if you don't have it, just find a way to manage time and organization, because there are organizations that want to help. They just kind of have to know what you're doing. And I will say that the 501c3 status does help, but that can also be a hindrance, because everything is not about a charity in a pandemic. But again, it goes back to your passion, your purpose, your advocacy, your leadership, your innovation. You know, there is so much more that the NCAA pathway offers to diverse populations. It's not the sport, but if you can craft your message to get it across to parents and youth and athletes and councilmen and politicians and organizations, it's a wide open. And it took me years to craft the correct message. Now that the message has been crafted, look forward to our programs to expand, and anyone that's interested in learning more, being mentored, or just want me to, we want to chat, please do reach out, because I'm always available. My charge as a leader is to give back, because someone did it for me. So
Absolutely.
yeah, that's very important.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Dr. Takima Dorsey. An amazing presentation. It was so engaging. And we're looking forward to garnering and partnering so that we can be champions to get the NCAA and be on that pathway to getting more women of color, Black, Indigenous people of color, and women in the sport.
Yeah, thank you. And have a great day, and stay through to the end, because it's a lot of great information out there. And thanks again, everyone.
Thank you. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that brings us to our next transition, lunchtime. Yay. I don't know about you, but I am excited to get some lunch. Be sure to get that nutrition. We cannot do this without having good nutrition, and nutrition is an important part. So grab something to eat, get you some water, and I'll see you back here at 12:30. See you in a few.